the death of Seth Rich. And Rod Rosenstein was waiting in this operation as well, I believe, correct?
Yes, pardon me. Sorry. Okay, sorry. He was, for their reasons, for the legal reasons, but also to cover himself. When Seth Rich had gone in, the first time I just don't have much information on it, other than what was told, but not what I'd seen personally. His first contact with WikiLeaks, I just don't know. I do know that when he went to him second time and came back, WikiLeaks had directed him on how to get further information. And they wanted specific things. Look here, look here, here. Just when he went in for the break-in, he grabbed a lot of information, just downloaded everything he could, and it exposed a lot. They were worried about the exposure. The DNC, Hillary, and Bowser, Abrams, or not Abrams, excuse me, Bowser in Brazil, excuse me. They're all very worried about it. But Rod was personally worried about it as well because he had been altering stuff to affect Hillary Clinton, and he didn't want that to come out because he would be out of it, he'd be done, he would not be appointed to anything, and he had a personal interest in that one. So when it got dumped in his lap to handle the problem, he hired tapped people who he'd already worked with for years, who were dirty and he controlled. They owed their continued federal careers to him. He had saved them before, looked over things, allowed them to continue their career. And he put them on it. He took people all around him in one small circle in Baltimore.
So was it intended to be an assassination of Seth Rich, or was it more intended to be a robbery? Or do you know?
Intended to be a robbery, rough him up. All they wanted was the thumb drive that he routinely carried on him, the information he was going to pass to WikiLeaks, what he had uncovered, and the more focused information that WikiLeaks had requested. That's what they wanted. He did not leave it at home. He always carried it. He had people living with it. And again, Rod was very upset that this could expose everything and wreck his plans. He would have been done. It was a fairly tenuous relationship, you know, him being a Republican and things, but he had proven himself to be really dirty like they were and willing to give access to him and everything he was doing for them. So he had to recover it. And they didn't care, he did not care how it was done. Seth Rich was supposed to be robbed. They had to recover it, did not care. But Rod put the additional thing on it was get it no matter how. And he hired, tapped his agent friend from DEA, who he had covered for many, many times, and he's dirty, in Baltimore and other places throughout Maryland. Excuse me. And then put him in charge of it. He recruited someone else. And then they went down and this particular DEA agent is the gang specialist for the DEA and specializes further in MS-13. He was the one who went outside to local people and had the connections to find the two MS-13 people down south. And brought them up, or met them actually. They came up and met him. He brought them into the city. And things went poorly beyond that. They were supposed to rob him, and the two guys went ahead and killed him, shot him, he died later. I recovered a thumb drive, which was then switched for one that Rod had provided, one that Sean had loaded up for him previously. He was able to recover it, keep his involvement in altering emails, breaking into Hillary Clinton's server, things like that. He kept it secret.
So they switched a thumb drive that was on the body for a thumb drive that Rod had prepared to be left behind as a just.
Right.
Okay.
One that would be convincing but not expose him.
Understood.
A lot of it was the same information, but not, because they knew where the breaches occurred. So a lot of it was the same thing, just void of anything that would point towards them or Rod specifically. And things rapidly went downhill because they couldn't break into it. It was encrypted. They got it to a couple different people. They couldn't get into it. And they decided to clean up the mess. And when the DEA agent went down, following day, called out, took his wife's car, drove down, killed him. things like that. So it went bad quickly once he died. It's supposed to be a robbery. Next thing to hear is, Donna Brazil and Mario Bowes, the mayor of DC, were at the hospital before he was even brought in. And they did have people at the crime scene as well. And they were there to recover it. As I said, it's supposed to be a robbery. He's supposed to be in, beat up, unconscious, bad shape. And they wanted to recover the thumb drives while they're there.
Interesting. So back to Rod Rosenstein for a moment. What can you tell us about his involvement with foreign nations, with any type of intelligence transfer to groups outside of the country?
This goes back to a FBI operation called Ghost Stories. It was very successful. They just kept heavy surveillance on known Russian assets within the U.S. Everything they were doing, what they were doing, they found, what they were communicating back. It was just surveillance, but if you knew what they were sending back, then it would go the other way. You could tell what they were accessing, what they had access to. It's a really good operation. It was supposed to be very successful. It was Obama and Biden who did the Russian reset, along with Secretary Clinton. And they didn't want any problems with the Russians. Of course, you read them on Rostom. So they told them to cancel it. And they didn't. They kept their communication open with them. It just changed. And instead of just surveillance, they started communicating, started providing information. Initially it was wrong, but then they started just flat out giving it to them in an exchange type of situation. Then they started altering the information, giving them accurate information. They were working from the other side. Rod was aware of this. He was part of it at this time because once it was shut down, it became under the heading of the DOJ in Maryland and DC. So he was part of it, and they were giving us this information. They tried to pay him, and he didn't take it. He was like, oh, no, because they were coming towards 2015, 2016 at the time, and he was angling for a big position. Attorney General, Supreme Court, and hopefully Vice President. So he didn't want anything like that to pop up. Well, Sean Bridges was actually taking the money they were offering. He was laundering it through Bitcoin around the world, and Rod was hyper pissed when he found out. It's one of the reasons he went after Sean and put him in jail. He's still there. And so the deal was you get 6 years, keep your mouth shut, we'll go after you for everything and get 40. But he started talking, had too much access when he was in Terre Haute, and they brought him out to Virginia where he's at now. Just keep an eye on him. So,
okay.